Hey guys, welcome back. Episode 4 of the Fast Motor Podcast. We are back, racing season, full swing. So kind of like we did last week. Now that we have some highlights, we're gonna kind of rat them off as we kick off our show. I'm gonna start with news stuff. High Limit has a new title sponsor, Interstate Batteries, getting back on the sprint car side. So that's pretty cool to see them kind of jump into the grassroots level. They've been super active in NASCAR for years. Seeing them get involved on the dirt track stuff and really notable sponsor. Like, it's cool. It's both parties. It's cool for. I'm happy about it. Other High Limit news: Hank Davis, Oklahoma driver, who has kind of made his name recently at the Chili Bowl. He's super competitive, kind of racing around the Midwest region. But he's won a prelim in the Tulsa Expo Center. It's been really, really fast there. Excited to see what he can do on a national schedule in that 17 car. And then going other news, James Hinchcliffe. We got another IndyCar veteran joining the trucks at St. Petersburg. First it was Dario, now it's Hinchcliffe. I'm excited to see if there's more. That'll be an interesting one. It's already was kind of a crazy race with the trucks going to St. Petersburg, and now it's just
I think another one there is Adam Andretti.
Oh, I hadn't seen that.
He's younger brother of John.
Yeah.
And he has been running the Trans Am stuff for a while, and I think he's driving the Tricon.
Okay.
Yeah. So
putting some road racers in some good equipment, always fun. Or kind of bringing back the road course ringers, like the Ron Fellows of the world, like there used to be. So that'll be exciting. I'll start with USAC highlights, because man, there was a lot of USAC racing. Volusia. There was one more night after our last one. Jake Swanson dominated. It was going on when we were recording last night, and I mean, dominated. So cool tie with Jake. He's got inland rigging on the car, which is Tom Dunkel owned. Tom's a great friend. Hopefully we'll get him on this podcast one of these days. But really cool. Happy for him. He's taking that sponsor nationally and having success, and cool for Jake. I've grown up watching Jake Swanson. So really happy for him to have success with his own team. And then they USAC boys hopped on over to Ocala. Trey Osborne out of Indiana, the tallest USAC driver to ever win a race. Works on his own stuff, like typical your old school kind of racer. He's, put sponsorship money in to go and travel. They're working on his stuff. Like, cool story. I think everybody was thrilled to see him win. It just seems like a really great kid. And then Logan Seavey found his way back on top. No surprise there, which I think that was his, I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, it was his first one at Ocala. He's been pretty good at Volusia in years past. I don't know that he's got one at Ocala, so that might be his first. Then Chase Stockin got to Victory Lane. Another kind of smaller team, but happy for him. He's another Indiana guy. And then Justin Grant got the finale, which he's usually pretty dang good in Florida. He had some speed this year. Not the dominant performances we've seen him put on especially at Ocala in years past. But they found speed at the end. A very diverse week of winners down in Florida, which I think sets us up for a really exciting USAC sprint car season. New Smyrna World Series of Asphalt also finished up. So many classes of cars. I can't keep track of all of them. And frankly, usually I follow the late model stuff because I know some guys this year. The pro late models I kind of gave up on this year because, my gosh, they tore up a lot of equipment. But it's good racing nonetheless. But like I said, so many names to rattle off that I will just save the minutes that it would take. But the big one, the Clyde Hart Memorial, Carson Brown took the lead early, got it done on the outside, which is tough to do at that place in a super late model, and got the win at that big show. So cool for him. He's fast. He's going to be very strong this year. He's running the Cars Tour full time and the ASA Stars full time. So fun to watch him in a late model. CRA kicked off their season at Paris. So West Coast Sprint Car Racing is going again. RJ Johnson, defending champion, picked up the win in his car. Then we'll go down to Daytona. Arca, Gio Ruggiero got the win there in the Gibbs car, which I think was their first super speedway win for the Gibbs. I think they were saying that in an interview. Not like they're a small team that's struggling by any means, but it was their first super speedway win. Trucks at Daytona, Wild won. Chandler Smith ended up getting the win there at the end. Seas kind of parted for him, and he had some good help and had a good run, and off he went and took it. And O'Reilly series, I'm gonna have to get used to saying that. Austin Hill dominated, and I will go on record, not an Austin Hill fan. But my goodness, he's a great plate racer. Like, he's smart, he takes his runs, dominant performance, and he's got. I mean, they have great cars, but a lot of them have great cars. It's pretty impressive what he can do there. And then the Daytona 500. Kind of a varying cast of front runners that whole race, and Tyler Reddick ended up winning on a double crash last lap, but they let him race around, and I think every single person crashed except Tyler Reddick, and so he was the last guy standing and crossed the finish line all by himself with everybody spinning across behind him. And so that's kind of what I got for highlights for the week. If you want to add to any of those.
I think just to go back, the USAC racing I thought was pretty interesting how diverse it was. You had a lot of different players, Swanson to come in and dominate like that. I think the start of a season always brings you optimism. You make changes. And I always say in the business world, you don't ever really get that break between one business year and the next year. And in racing, you get this just hiatus to make changes, make improvements, change chassis manufacturers, crew chiefs, shock engineers, engines, whatever it might be. And you start with optimism. And so, off they all go down to Florida, hoping that all the changes they made worked. And, I think it's too early to tell, but it was fun to see some new players. Chase Stockton and that team, they support the full USAC schedule. The car's always painted the same, so a win to them is big. I remember, I can't remember who won for them last year.
He did.
Was it Chase?
Yeah.
And they're like, that was a huge win. So it's fun to watch teams like that win. And then, Osborne to just do what he's done. It'd be interesting to talk to our guest a little bit about him and what he knows, because, you don't have many of those drivers that I won't say in USAC they don't work on their stuff, because Swanson, CV, Grant, or they all do. But, in the world of racing, you don't see that much. And then to be, in a smaller team and really working that way and finding a way to the racetrack and winning was huge. Jade Avedissian won, correct?
She won at New Smyrna in the super late. But that was
that before last week?
That was before last week.
All right. So you had young upcomers all throughout. And then you go to Daytona. Obviously, what's kind of interesting, and I hadn't really thought about it until you started talking, is the truck race and the cup race almost ended in the same way, where the bottom, they moved up off the bottom, and that train, trying to block that top, and the train on the bottom had that momentum and just drove by everybody.
Yeah.
So, it's really interesting, reading the blogs and reading the information on everybody, and, the frustration with the fuel mileage races and cup. And I think we've really just came to an era that the engineers have learned and been able to run so many different race strategies that they have the optimum, and that is save fuel, because that pays a difference. There's only, there's plenty of passing on the track now. And so how do I come out, how am I up front with the cars so evenly matched? And, I was thinking about earlier today, and I thought the more that we build power, find speed, find these things, and then we have to restrict cars. And anytime we restrict cars, we put ourselves in this kind of chaos. because it's like there's a limit for the fastest, and then everybody else kind of catches up. So you have this just entire mob running at the same speed, doing the same thing, and it's going to be chaotic. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be the yesteryear of '79 and cars banging off of each other, and there's only two battling for a lead. You're going to have this. So, I don't know that the super speedways, Daytona will always be Daytona, and it's amazing. And if you've never been there and you want to go hear the roar of that pack go by, it's worth it, without a doubt. But super speedway racing, I don't believe will ever be what it once was. It can't be, because the cars could be capable of too much speed, and the teams have figured out how to manipulate whatever rules that package would be. You could change them 100%. And I think we would have the same thing in some form shortly. So
yeah, it wouldn't take long to get back to what it is.
Nah, it is racing, and it's a kind of different kind of racing. And it's like play chess all the way until you got a lap to go, and then
go
for it. and I don't think any of us, like the true racers, love that. Like you want to be the fastest car. You want to be the team that, like Earnhardt used to go down there and they'd sit on the pole, or, run fast and have well-handling cars. And, now everybody's just very equal, which makes it great at a lot of places. Just, I don't know that makes it great there. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we kind of took a little longer there, but it was good. There was a lot of stuff to talk about this week, and we'll continue to talk about it a little bit with our guest, who was down in Florida at the USAC stuff all week. So it'd be fun to get his takes. Again, last week I wore a shirt to give a hint. I got shirt to give a hint again. So our guest today is National Sprint Car Hall of Famer Shane Carson. So let's get him in here. Shane, thanks for joining us tonight.
A great time to be on with you guys, and good to see you, Elijah. Good to see you, Randy.
Nice
Listening to your recap of things certainly spells it out.
Yeah. Well, that's the goal anyway. I will go on kind of what Dad said, because I know that you'd sent me a picture last week that you met Trey Osborne after he won. A little bit of what because he seems like an old school guy. He's young, but a little bit kind of what you met about him, and kind of what maybe the rest of the world is quickly going to learn probably, but doesn't quite know yet about Trey.
Yeah, well, I didn't really know. I knew of his name. I had never met him, and we were standing around by driver's meeting, and this kid's wandering around. That's about, I think he's real close to 7 foot tall. I'm not much over 5'3" or 4, so he was pretty intimidating. He was right there with me, and somebody actually told me. I said, "You know who that is?" And I said, "No," and I figured it out, and that was before I saw him win. And he's very qualified in and out of the car. He's got a couple of guys that help him, older guys that he can send after water and fuel and things like that. But he makes every call on the setup, on working through any kind of problems that they have. He built the motor originally. The motor was 25 years old, I believe. It's a Mopar motor. I'm not sure where he got it, but he does all the rebuilds for it, and he does the maintenance on it between one night and the next. And the kid's obviously done his homework, because he's doing the right things, and he drives very well on track. He doesn't get himself in trouble. He doesn't run over anybody trying to get there. So he's really, really pretty cool to watch. And I was very impressed. And he was definitely one of the heavy hitters for that whole week. And I went down and told him, I said, I know there's another Mopar motor, a couple of them, that I think it was CJ Leary had it. He had a couple of motors, and I told him, I said, he's got those motors under his bench and he wants to sell them. And he was very, interested in that. And he goes, "Well, I know I'm going to have to win some more races to make enough money to get that done." I said, "Well, you got a good start." So he just won the night before. So, he is a good kid though. And his car's, I'd say, fairly up-to-date car, but like I say, the motor was, at least 25 years old. I'm not sure how long it's been since they were really in the midst of running those Mopars, and that was really kind of a spinoff. And you would know, Randy, they were kind of the truck motor that they kind of redid for a sprint car, put an aluminum block in it and started racing them. I think Stanton probably had a lot to do with it. And
I think I read somewhere where that was an old Stanton engine.
Yeah.
So, if anybody knows how to build sprint car engines, it's scary. So
yeah, really. He was great. He could do the car and the motor. And, it was like John Singer. When I drove for him, he built Speedway motors and stuff. And he also did the motor work. And, he had his own, he told me he had a dyno one day, and I went over to his shop. I wanted to see it. And it was a starting stand that you could fire the motor up. And he said that's all he needed for a dyno. So he was pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of lead me into my kind of first question topic that I want to get into, because we're talking, you and I kind of talked a little bit, because I kind of gave you kind of a short synopsis of kind of what we wanted to cover, of the new school versus old school. Obviously, motorsports has changed a lot from your days, Dad's days, now to my days. Like, we've seen it. I mean, even in my timeline of watching from when I was a kid to now, like, it's changed so much. The drivers, the style of driving. You're talking about kind of, he's a guy that does it like, I hear the stories of drivers back then. Yeah. You were around the USAC guys all week, and you're around a lot of dirt racing. Who are some of the guys that, because I want to know, because I want to become fans of the old school guys. Who are some other guys that you see that are kind of that way, and kind of how they approach their stuff, and then also, sorry, to follow, like, some of the new guys that do it a different way. Kind of compare the two, if you would.
Well, it seems to me like some of the younger guys, CV, Grant, those guys are fairly young, but they've already been at it a while, and they're very competitive, and like you say, Grant won the final night after having 3 or 4 nights of just total chaos. The thing it was shaking so bad it shook the bleeders out of the wheels. I mean, he couldn't even hardly focus on driving it. But they kept. And I talked to Jeff Walker about it today. He said they changed everything on the car almost every night, trying to narrow it down. And I guess he nailed it, because the last night, I mean, he was the show, and he came from 8th to 1st. And if you got to watch the replay, you would see it was all because of the way he was entering the corner 1 and 2 and squaring it off. And that track at Ocala, it's like a big sweeper down the back straightaway. So in order to get any kind of speed, you got to come off the 2 right and cut across the bow in the back chute. And he was getting her done. I mean, he went by those guys 10, 15 mile an hour faster than they were going, because they were sliding up and he was going by them. But he's one of those guys that can work on his own car also, but he's got a few guys that help him, and so does Logan Seavey, and Trey was just one of the ones that didn't have anybody really telling him what to do. He's the one that was telling them other guys what to do. So I thought that was kind of cool, and I'm sure there are others like that. CJ Leary is really good. He's been around for a long time, and he was running up front. He had Fred Hayden with him, and Fred and I have been friends for years. He had the Knoxville Nationals winning car that Eddie Levitt drove back in the 70s. And he's still around, and he's still going to races, and he's a big fan of Leary. So, he's got a little bit of old school help along with his new guys. I think that's cool, a cool combination to have, because you've got guys that had history and a lot of knowledge from back in the day, and then the newer guys that are more on the technical side, but you kind of mix them together, and you got a really cool combination. It's kind of like like when Swindell was like that. Sammy did his own stuff, but then he kind of got in with the guys that were the high tech suspension people, shock people, and so between him and them, I mean, if you noticed, he won a lot of races back in the day, and then his winning streak ran from about probably 75 to recently. I think he may still be winning.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we had a great time being down there. I don't know if you've heard of Grady Wade, but he's a Hall of Fame driver out of Kansas. He's 90 years old now, but I took him to every race, and he loves the non-wing cars because it's like what he ran.
Right.
And he's not really hot on the wing cars, because they're so fast, they're hard to keep up with them. and B, they're not like what he drove. So we try to make as many of the non-wing stuff as we can.
Shane, you do such a good job of, so many drivers spend their career and or they won't get out of the seat, or they walk away from the sport completely, or you see them around a little bit. And you're still so involved. You're so involved with the Hall of Fame and keeping drivers from the yesteryear to the forefront. What drives you to do that? And one thing we really haven't even talked about your past. I mean, like Elijah would constantly say, being in Oklahoma and getting to meet you, it's like walking around with the king of dirt racing in Oklahoma. I mean, and there's been some amazing talent come out of there, but you were a part of that original Outlaws, like where the guys, found a way, got the cars and got on the road and went and, did the deal. So, tell us, I'd love to hear what your biggest win is, what your like iconic year or win was. I mean, I think you had 21 wins in one season. Did I read that right?
Yeah, 25.
25.
That was my first year with Bob Trossel. That was 78. So
okay.
But yeah, I mean, there's some, all of that stuff kind of came from me being like you. I mean, you grew up wanting to be a racer from as long as you could remember, I'm sure. Elijah was lucky enough to be right there with you. So, he loved the same thing that you got to do. And my dad was the race promoter in Oklahoma City for forever. I was born into it. So, when I was coming along, I had an older brother who was 7 years older than me, Scott Carson. And he was a good driver and a good racer. He was a Vietnam vet, and he came back from Vietnam, and he was back in the seat. And he was, at that point, he had better equipment. And, so I got to watch him really get good. And I always wanted to be that way. And I guess that's probably what, fueled my desire to get into it. Now, years later, when, my last car owner passed away in 2000. So really that was 26 years ago. So when that happened, I didn't run anymore full time. I still run here and there. I won the Knoxville old timers race, if you want to call it that, Masters Classic in 2006. And that was the last time I won a race at Knoxville. But really I got out of it full time, but still I was still promoting the sport, and I still do that. I've always stolen the line from the Hall of Fame, promoting the future by preserving the past. And I don't know how many people there are to do that.
No.
So I feel like I need to hang in there. Elijah's a young guy, and he's lucky enough that you've been able to kind of teach him or tell him a lot about what went down. Other than that, he's out there digging around on his own, and he does a really good job with that.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how many guys like that are around. I want to keep doing it because I felt like I had the absolute best, place in life to be able to follow racing into my, through the years. And I don't know how a kid's going to be able to do that right now.
Yeah, I don't need, and that's, that's why we really started this podcast, is kind of talk about those big issues.
Yeah.
I think my first midget in 1981 was built in 1956.
Really?
Yeah. Weighed 1,241 pounds. I know that. I remember exactly. And, it was a Chevy 2. It didn't have a Volkswagen, had a bolt-on cage, but at the time it was all we could afford.
Yeah.
And, I luckily I ran, locally where the midgets were just starting up. So, I was competitive enough on a weekly level, but not when the big shows came in until we got an updated chassis. But, hard work, everybody worked on their stuff. You didn't have, and I don't not mean to knock these people, but you don't buy an engine and just bolt it in. You don't buy the shocks and just bolt them on. You don't, you did all the work yourself. And so hard work gave you maybe not an advantage, but at least made you competitive where, the others weren't. And now everybody bolts on their stuff.
Yeah.
So you can buy equally. And then, if somebody has more money and can buy more stuff, then they become just better in a way. And then I think, I think what you talked on there with Elijah is he's eager. He's an eager fan for the love of the sport. And I don't, and you and I, we came along wanting to race because at a local track, those were our heroes. I mean, we weren't on Flow and watching these guys on a national level. I didn't even know there was a possibility to do more. I mean, I can tell you the evolution as I raced locally. I raced go-karts, then I raced locally.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, I'd sure like to drive some more in the Northwest or California. And so then we made trips to California, and it's been documented so many times that Tiffany and I would leave every Friday night and drive to Southern California. And it was 751 miles doorstep to doorstep. Drive home Sunday 31 times a year to race. And people go, that's crazy. But it's like, that's how hungry we were to do what we loved.
Yeah.
And now I just don't know. It's not fair to say that raw desire is not there, but that's why I think Osborne's so fun for us, is because that's how bad he wants it.
Yeah.
And
he definitely does. Yes.
Right. We just wanted to race. And we didn't even care. NASCAR was not an opportunity. Like, I never even dreamed the Speedway wasn't an opportunity. You just wanted to race. And so, I love it for Elijah because he just loves the sport of what it was, what it is, where it's going. I don't know that the young generation is falling in love with it like that. Yeah. And it should be the most opportune time ever for short track racing to explode, because attention deficit, disorder, or social media, or our mindset to go, because we're bored, to go to the phone. With the sprint car race, man, you don't have any time. Like, you are fully on watching, and then it's done. Like, a NASCAR race is not going to survive probably in the next generation of being 3.5 hours long, because no one's going to spend 3.5 hours watching anything. Baseball's done everything they can to shorten the game. So, I appreciate what you're doing, because, I know the connection Elijah made with you has meant the world to him, because he's heard it from my stories, but to meet somebody else and chat about the history, and you were an outlaw. I mean, man, for me growing up, like when we were talking about Open Wheel magazine, like seeing guys like you, those were idols for me. And it might have even been in the same era, in the same time frame, but you were bigger than life because you were in a national magazine. So, I appreciate you doing that, because you probably are connecting to more people than you will ever realize, and it's helping preserve the sport.
Yeah, I'm not giving up on it. When I was a kid, like what we were talking about earlier, I grew up in Oklahoma City. The Fairground Speedway in Oklahoma City was like the best place running weekly. And my dad was running it, so I had the in. I was selling programs, I was doing whatever. And I grew up watching all those guys running. Now the weekly guys was better than anybody. We had races during the state fair, and we'd have the spare circuit. When you had the IMCA running around the country, and they would show up to run Oklahoma City, but they run Sunday afternoon, and it was like a dust bowl almost. And I never did get it why my dad wanted to have those races when we had the best races on Friday night every week. We were averaging 8,000 people. It was an amazing time. And the sprint car guys would come in, and I just didn't get it. And I think the way I got it is my brother was interested in it enough to make me go with him to Dallas, to Devil's Bowl. And it was a night race, and it was heavy, and Opperman was there, and Burkle, and all these guys that you know.
Yeah.
And man, it changed my whole outlook on it. Then I realized why Harold Leap could run all over the country and come to Oklahoma City and beat all them guys, because he had been running all these tracks around the country. And that Kansas group, Grady Wade, the one I was just staying with, those guys were all Hall of Fame drivers from up in their area, Wichita, Nebraska, Missouri, Sedalia, and they were that good. And I just didn't know it until I went down there and watched that race. And
Now, does that part of the country still survive with sprint car racing? I don't hear about it. Because now we hear, and I want to get your take on the high limit outlaw. Like
well,
you're
well,
ideal to bring in
yeah.
talk about.
Well,
Is that healthy
I've
or?
always been an outlaw guy because I was out there. I was there at the first race, and I've got a big spot in my heart because of that. So I'll always be an outlaw, I guess, if you want to call it that. And I know that may not be very popular to some people, but I really think that both of them have good races,
Right.
and both of them have good drivers, and you know it. And what's cool, I think, is when we have the Knoxville Nationals and they're all there at once.
Yeah.
That's a really big deal, because they have the ones that are winning all these and ones that are winning all those. Then they get together and let's see who's going to be the best. And I think it's a great thing from Knoxville to be able to promote Eldor's the same way. They've got those names coming in that aren't there all the time. So
I
it's
think
really
it's
yeah, it's neat.
for me as a fan,
Yeah,
it's super healthy for it. Because it is that you get to watch you have a little bit of rivalry like
Yeah.
in the sport. We know Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, whoever. You always
Yeah.
had those. You have the good guy, the bad guy, or whoever likes one doesn't like the other. So that's made the sport. So now you have a series, and I don't really. The fans might kind of balk at the other one, but they're still watching the other one. Like they're just paying attention, right? Like you can say, "Oh, I love this," but you're still paying attention to the other. And then when they come together, you have that kind of connection to root for something. You really want this guy to make it.
Yeah.
I like that high limits trying to do different things through a night. The roll of the dice. They've done a good job with, because we all love dirt racing, right? Even though I wasn't spectacular at it, I love it because I love the ever-changing track. I love what goes on during a race. I love trying to find grip. I love, what it brings. But then you put it on TV, and now we got a break to dig up the track, and we've got to do this, and we got to do that, and you lose me. You lose me, who's a diehard fan through those downtimes. But they're trying different things. They're trying to make it so it's a TV kind of, now they have FS1.
Right.
They have, back. I mean, you and I probably remember when, what is it? CBS Sports or Sports Spectacular finally put it on the Terre Haute.
Yeah. I do remember that.
And it's probably 6 months delayed or whatever, but it was, like you finally get to see a sprint car race on dirt. And that was it on TV.
Yeah.
So, talk about the Outlaws. Talk about your love. What do you love about it?
Well,
just that you were there.
Yeah, probably that would have been it. It really got me hooked early on, and then of course I became a race promoter as well. So I had 22 years of promoting the Outlaws at Oklahoma City, and I did usually two races a year, one in the spring, one in the summer. And Ted Johnson was trying to figure out places to go. He started in '78. My first outlaw show in Oklahoma City was in 1980. So, I was there pretty early on, and I watched it kind of ride. I was riding the wave, I mean, it was a popular event to have, and Oklahoma City had never had one. And it really got big. I mean, I was very proud of it. My dad was, he told me right off the bat, he said, "I don't think this will work at Oklahoma City." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, how much are you going to charge?" I said, "Well, I think I'm going to charge $12. And he goes, "Oh, that'll never work." He said, "That's too much money." So he said, "Well, what's the purse?" I said, "Well, the purse is 12,000. Oh, that'll never work either. But we did have the race. We had 8,000 people. We made it work, and the fans just loved it. The next race it was even bigger, and it was a great thing for us in Oklahoma City to have that race. It's and Tulsa got one then, and then we were all trying to kind of help the schedule out because we needed a Midwest run through here, especially early in the year. You start in Florida, you come out and you run Dallas, Houston, Dallas, Oklahoma City, and kind of work through the middle, and then as it warmed up, you worked your way north. But but I mean, I really was proud of putting on those races, and I just don't know that that it'll ever be like that again. Well, for one thing, Oklahoma City did away with the track.
Right.
They decided they needed more parking for the horses. They have horse
Mm,
shows and stuff, and which I don't get because really nobody goes to the fair anymore, in my opinion. But you know, so we lost a great place to race, and
yeah.
Tulsa pulled out too. You know, they went back to whatever they were doing in horses, I believe, and they had a horse track there, and so yeah, we've lost a bunch of tracks, and you know, I mean, every year, you know, we worry about, you know, those big tracks like that going away. Luckily, we've got the big ones that are pretty solid. They're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a good thing for us and for our sport.
Yeah. Yeah. It's obviously a huge challenge.
Yeah.
You know, on many fronts, right? You have the, you know, I you know, we'll probably get your take on the streaming side of things too, but, um, you know, I think that's helping the sport. It's allowing you to see stars. It's allowing you to follow it on a regular basis. So when it does come in for the traveling circuits, at least, you know, then when they come in, I can tell you my outlaw story is, you know, I read them in Open Wheel magazine. I watched it on Speed Sport News every week, and you know, man, the old Milwaukee,
Yeah.
Sammy car, the you know the famed 11 Steve car. Furkel being just kind of the raw, you know, outlaw. And I'd graduated high school.
Was right there. Wolfgang was right in the
Yeah,
middle.
Wolfgang and
With whatever, you know, the good owner had that he had.
right.
Yeah.
And then we were going, my dad and I, we were going to Laguna Seca because I was going to work at Laguna Seca so I could drive sports cars because it was the only way to get to the speedway, I thought. And so I graduated high school, was going to live there, work on the cars during the week, and you'd get to race them like 5 times a year. It was a great thing for them, not a great thing for a driver.
No.
And I remember us driving to there, and we drove by Baylands. And there was a banner up that said the World Outlaws here tonight and tomorrow night. And my dad and I are like, well, we'll go there, find me a place to live, and then we're coming back. And so we went back and, you know, I got to see the Outlaws live. And that was my first time. And it was that's how big they were, right? That was iconic show.
That was a huge time at Baylands and all those tracks in Northern California, and they had a great promotion group doing them. You know, Barkheimer and Terry Ness at Baylands. I mean, we were all pretty close. And in the mid '80s, you know, we were all going out there because it was part of the schedule. So I mean, that was a great time to be on the road racing, in my opinion. You know, Chico. Actually, when I started, it was Sacramento, West Capitol, and then it got a little bit too big for there. So John Paget moved down to Chico and kind of took over the fairgrounds and took the outlaw shows and big shows with him. And it stayed there. I mean, they're still running there. So, you know, we're really lucky that they've kept that going. And actually, Brad Sweet, I believe, bought maybe Kyle and Brad. I'm not sure, but I think they own the deal to running Chico now.
Yeah, it's Kyle, Brad Sweet, and I think Colby Copeland.
That's right. Yeah,
some ownership in it too.
Yeah, so that's excellent. I mean, you know, that's another fairgrounds track that we didn't lose. It's just changed the people running it. Of course, you know, John passed away, and he was the guy that was, you know, right in the middle of all the racing out west.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's cool because we talk about losing racetracks. And California, you know, me growing up out there, California's lost a ton, especially recently. I mean, just a lot have been lost. But there's still a very strong sprint car scene out there and some really good drivers. There's a ton of talent. Like first one comes to mind is Caleb Montgomery, who runs out there. I mean, he is a talent, fun to watch. Then I got to move to Oklahoma, and I'll kind of give a little background on how I met you to kind of transition into this. So when I was going to Chili Bowl the first year, Dad had got your contact, and so I got your number, and I was like, "Hey, I'm coming to Chili Bowl, and I'd love to meet you." Or I might have even been messaging through Dad at that point, and then we had contacts. But whatever, I was like, because you guys had a connection through working at the Petty School,
right?
And so, you know, I got it up there and I bought this shirt, and I was like, okay, you got to sign it. And then we talked for like probably we talked for like an hour is what it felt like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Old stories, old racing, and then then throughout the whole next year, as I was going and taking photos and running around at tracks, and I'd see you, and we'd just hang out. And for anybody who doesn't know, being with Shane Carson at a dirt track in Oklahoma is probably one of the coolest experiences as a race fan that you can have, because everybody's coming up and talking, and you, whether you do or don't, you seem like you remember everybody's face. Like you talk to people like you know them, which is, I mean, everybody, like when we first met, and I had never met you in my life, you talked to me like we'd known each other for years, and it was just that welcoming thing. And then it's just these crowds of people, and it's stories, and it's talking old. Here's this. Hey, this is my friend. Like the USAC show at Red Dirt last year. Like Doug Heveron was there, modified guy from the Northeast.
Yeah.
Like, hey, meet him. And I'm like, I have his little blue number 3 modified box on.
Tell me that.
Just hanging out at the track, and
yeah,
we talk about the culture of racing, and it's like Dad was kind of alluding to earlier, like what we want to talk about on this podcast is we want to talk about the issues and conversations that need to happen to push the sport forward, but we also want to celebrate the things. And Oklahoma dirt track racing, and I will say in a large part thanks to you, because of how much you do to stay involved and keep just pushing it to the forefront, and what you do with people. Oklahoma dirt track racing is awesome. There's such a wide range of talent, whether it's a factory stock, a sprint car, non-wing, wing, modifieds. Like there's just so much great racing. And so I'd like you to kind of touch on just a little bit of how you've seen it grow, because we talk about losing tracks. Red Dirt is one that we lost really recently. I love that. Probably one of my favorite tracks in the country. But just how it's kind of evolved and how it's changed, and what people who don't know what they should know about that racing scene in Oklahoma.
Well, I mean, initially there was really nobody from Oklahoma that traveled, and the ones that ran Oklahoma just kind of stayed there. But in the 70s, I got an opportunity to drive for Laverne Nance, and as soon as I got off to drive for Nance, and we did good. I actually won a race in Phoenix City, Alabama, and Bob Trossel was there. Well, when Doug Wolfgang moved away, on the Speedway Motors car, then Trossel was looking for that guy that beat him at Phoenix City, Alabama. So I got an opportunity to drive for him. So really we were one of the first people from Oklahoma that went out there and did it. And I feel like that kind of helped promote other people from Oklahoma, Andy Hillenberg, people that you've heard of, and good racers. And I remember Keith Coons asked me one day, he goes, what do you feed those kids down there? I said, what do you mean? He goes, all of them kids from Oklahoma are good. That's what he told me. And I said, well, I don't know that we feed them anything different, but I'm glad that they're running and following the circuit, and we've got a bunch of them out there. And now, I mean, you look at almost any race any big race, and there's a couple of Oklahoma guys in it. I'm really proud of that. I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but I'm really proud that they're there. And the Oklahoma history is really deep. Like I said, with my dad running that track from the 70s, or actually he started in 57, and he was just running stock cars, 40 Ford coupes and things like that. And then as it evolved into an open wheel, more of an open wheel car, they called them super modifieds, and they weren't like your cars, Randy, with the offset motors and all that. They were, conventional, almost like an Edmunds car, but 100-inch wheelbase, self-starting. They became a real popular division, and Tulsa, adopted those rules. Dallas, Lawton, all the tracks in our area, Wichita, they had that same rule, so we could run all those places. And pretty soon, my dad was involved in the early 70s at putting together a series called the NCRA. That was a traveling series, but we ran the tracks that ran those cars, and we only ran them on Sundays. So we didn't run against anybody, but all those, those cars from that particular track would all meet up there. We had huge car counts, and the racing was really good. And I felt like that's what kind of fueled it to move on and keep getting bigger, and it did. In the late 80s, they actually had to change the car design and the car type, and that's when they went sprint cars, because the 100-inch cars that was the only place they were running them, and it wasn't really feasible for the chassis builders to keep building them. So we didn't have any new cars around unless somebody built it themselves, But the Gambler Chassis Company came out with a 100-inch car. Stanton had them, Nance had them, Barnett had them out of Phoenix. But as soon as it started kind of leaning towards everybody was going to go to sprints, then they quit building them, and that kind of pushed us into the sprint car deal. And now, obviously, it's fine because everybody's running sprint cars anyway. But there was a time there where we were running the 100-inch cars, and it kind of affected the future of the racing around here. So most of them, Lanny Edwards, GW Elkins out of Amarillo, some of the guys that were really, really involved in getting the NCRA going, they went ahead and switched over to the sprint car design, and we just kept running. We still called it NCRA, but we just running sprint cars instead. Some of the drivers were the same guys that ran the 100-inch cars, but a lot of them were starting to, decided to retire from racing. Maybe they had a kid, and all of a sudden we had second and third generation families and drivers, just like your friend from Meridian that was talking to on his show. I guess it was yesterday or last week, and he was talking about how he had those different generations of families that were still involved in that track, and it really promoted the racing in his area. And they exactly the same thing happened to us, and so we was able to keep all that going. I felt like that the most important thing we had going for us was we still had the half-mile track. We had a quarter mile on the inside. We ran 2 divisions of cars, and there was almost 100 cars there every night with 2 divisions. So it was a real good time for us to be in the racing business, and a lot of those kids that came out of modified go-karts or whatever they were into modifieds, into super modifieds, and then they went on to the sprint cars or the late models or whatever they wanted to drive. So we kept it going pretty well, and I was really happy that I was able to see that happen.
Yeah, I never really thought about it. You just bring up what Adam said about the generation after generation after generation. And the one thing when we lose a racetrack, we don't just lose a racetrack, we lose kind of that generational love for racing.
Yeah.
Because we all know it doesn't take much for us to, change to affect what we do. So now instead of going to Lawton every week, because it closed, you go to Red Dirt, then it closed, but maybe you don't go and you don't get that generational growth and love. So, when we lose a racetrack, we're not just losing the track where we race on, we're losing generational fans or support. It's just another knock. So, I wish there was a thing, Meridian Speedway did a great job getting themselves put on the historical directory. So the track couldn't really be touched. And I know they're trying to do some of that at Greenville Pickens. They're trying to do that at Nashville. They're trying, there's a push, but it's obviously hard to do without city support. And most cities, for whatever reason, don't want the tracks, and they'll say it's the noise, they'll say it's this, and people will complain. But I think we as racers, and Adam's done a really good job with this of making that track part of the city, and that takes work. That doesn't take arguing. That doesn't take stubbornness. That takes, how do we invest? How do we support the parades? How do we support nonprofits in the city? What can we do? So we become part of the fabric of the community more so than the outlaws that we were. Right? I mean, I think racers, if you're not a car person and you have a car that you're working on out front, or you're pushing the sprint car down the street and you're firing it because you have no other place, are you looked at favorably or not? And it's probably not, unless we do something to make ourselves part of it, where people go, man, those are good people, they're doing great things. There's more stories than just the racing, because we all know there's more stories than just the racing, right? There's the family, there's the the jumping in to help somebody. I mean, look at the cars at Chili Bowl, come off break, get banged up and they go into the work area and you've got 5 different teams trying to help their competitor.
In the car, yeah.
And you don't get that too much in sports, and you certainly don't get it too much in life, especially where we are today.
Yeah.
And racing brings that. But if you're an outsider, you don't know that. So it just, and this is,
right.
I think it does. Like, promoters need to find a way to invest into communities to where
and get the city behind you. Yeah.
Because then the city fathers, so to speak, say, wow, look at what this is doing. We would hate to lose that because this is an area. And I don't think racers see it that way. They just want to work on their cars. They want to go race. And I get it. But gosh, I look back in the years my dad raced, and, there was the Easter seals, and they would be in the parades, and they would take pictures with kids, and there was just, I don't know, there was almost more glamour about it outside the racetrack. In today's world, we talk a little bit about the pit area or the garage after a race.
Yeah.
Where, like, Elijah grew up at Meridian Speedway that has a big, huge, nobody leaves, right? Like,
I heard you saying that. Yeah. Yeah. None of the rigs left. They were all there.
Nobody could leave.
People could go down and hang out and get autographs and talk to them and get pictures.
It's too congested to leave. So it kind of happened that way. But that built, I remember when this is, in the early 80s, I had autograph cards, and really they were just pictures that were copied. And
you were there, one of the first. Yeah.
But people still have them there because they would come down and get them. And now a lot of drivers have those. And, there was a connection that Elijah would have to these drivers to want to go back. And so many of these teams roll in and roll out, and they, it's the entertainment on the track is only one piece of it, right? NASCAR doesn't survive because that sponsor is just on the track for that time. It's all the hospitality, all the stuff that goes along with it, all the elements. And, there's promoters are very different. You see those that know how to promote, and those that have lived the glory days. And once the glory days are over, they're off and going. And I think there's some more things. So, we always learn. I love this because we hear everybody's perspective, and it makes us think about learning, like, how can we help ourselves? Like, how can we help tracks stay afloat? Because a lot of times it's not financially as much as, the challenges, the other challenges.
Oh yeah. One thing we had in Oklahoma City, back in the 60s, we would have like media race, and all those media guys that get out there and in whatever kind of car we could get them in, and they would promote it, throughout their media all week. And we had 3 TV stations, we had 5 or 6 radio stations, so they were all out there. We had a newspaper guy or 2 that was in that same race, and I mean, it was a perfect tool. You didn't have to even buy any advertising because they were all there. Yeah. They were advertising for you. So I mean, I don't know how we get that going today, because it's not that easy to get the media guys to come out.
No, well, there is no media really, right? I mean, in one aspect, if you look at, you have your local news stations, so you have that, which is still there, but you don't really have newspapers in a lot of places.
Oh no, yeah.
How you buy ads is very different. What you do to promote a race is, on the social media, and challenging with social media, because it's likely somebody's cousin or brother or kid that's on social media that they choose. Well, they're not doing it from a business aspect where they're trying to promote the race. They're trying to just get likes on a picture, but does that really promote a race? Like, you look at it from a very different perspective. Right. And then, do they do it all the time? Are the algorithms set? Do they have the learnings? Like, social media is, I talk about it like, it's like us as racers. Everybody drives a car, so they think they understand what it's like to drive a race car.
Yeah.
And it's very different worlds, right? Driving a car at 20% of its capability around city streets with rules and laws is very different than driving something at 99.9% of its capability.
That's with
everybody trying to beat you.
Right.
And a track constantly changing, and tires going, and engines that are going and, whatever there. So
yeah, it's neat that you can, key on some of those items that people don't even think about, because
Yeah.
that's exactly what it's all about.
yeah.
It is.
What did you love most about racing?
Oh, I obviously winning is big, but that wasn't all of it. It was all about, we especially with the traveling series, you kind of take off from race to race, but when you get back to that race, everybody was there, so those were all your friends. So like you were kind of getting back with your friends race to race. I mean, maybe not all of them. We all had a few enemies, but we all got together at the track, and it was like kind of old home week and we did that every 80 times a year. However many races we ran, but I think I ran 105 my first year with Throstle, and that was 78.
Man, that's a lot in that day.
Right? Yeah.
Races.
I mean,
Oh, yeah.
they're not motor coaches or,
No, we had a camper shell on a dually, and my wife and I, we'd get in the camper shell up on the bed, and bounce down the road, however far it took, But everybody's got those kind of stories, but or at least I think you would. I guess the new guys don't. They got giant motorhomes, and they get up and down the road that way, but we didn't do
Yeah, it's a little cushier now.
it. Yeah.
And
I think they're missing out, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do too.
Well, I mean, just like you said, like you built those stories, and everybody could relate to those stories, and so then you were traveling up and down the road with all your friends.
Yeah,
and everybody was connected. And so then I kind of wanted to ask, you have all these, friends. I mean, you've been throwing out names all night, and every time I talk to you, throw out all these names of like, hey, I saw this guy, and we were just hanging out and had lunch, and it's just all these relationships that get built. And that's what I think separates a lot of motorsports is it's so relational. Like people just the stories, and it's like, hey, so-and-so, I know so-and-so. And it's like people just pull together. And like Adam said it really well last week. It's like when you buy a ticket to the race, you have your cool kid card because their neighbor is not there to watch the race, but you are. And so that's great. And we all love racing. And
think how many cool kid cards you got.
Yeah, a lot.
You got all those cards. Yeah.
So I wanted to kind of ask of like some of the stuff that you're doing now with the Hall of Fame, and then like just when you're going out to a local track on a given night of keeping those relationships and how you grow new ones, because I think that is something that the younger generation probably doesn't do as well.
That's the biggest challenge, and I still like to be involved with it because they've got the we're dealing with the guys that have all that history too. So they've got stories that maybe we haven't heard. So we want to get them out there and get them to tell them. Jack Hewitt told me at the race last weekend, he says, we need to just start recording all these, kind of meetings that we get together with all these guys and then start getting those published and getting them out there. And he's right. But, trying to organize that is almost like, it's a little bit of a challenge to try to make that happen, but he's right, because maybe the next year we won't be able to do that because they're not here. So I do worry about that part of it. I hate that when we lose somebody, we also lose all the stories that were in their head because nobody had them on paper, and nobody's got them on videos. So that's why Jack was talking about that. He said, we really need to do something about that. Huh. He's a thinker, that guy. He's funny, but he's definitely a thinker.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective.
I think we all have some Jack Hewitt stories.
We've all got them.
And I still haven't met him. That's just,
haven't you? Oh, well, he was at the Chili Bowl when you were there. So you didn't know to meet him.
I don't think he was. I think he
wasn't there the last 2 years. And then I saw that he was, I think, back this year.
No, he wasn't this year, but last year he was. And then he was going home. He had a van. He had all of his stuff in the van that he borrowed from Tampa or somewhere. And he was on the way home, and the van started having trouble, and they pulled over and it caught on fire. Burned everything inside of it. So he had nothing left, and he couldn't even get home. So, that was a rough story, but that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like Jack Hewitt was one of the toughest dudes, but deep down, man, that dude had a great heart.
He did.
Like when we did all of our cancer benefit stuff. Jack was there.
Yeah.
Jody was there, like just fully committed, like just, and you know, that big mustache when I grew up, man, that dude was an intimidating dude. So, like, you know, and then you get to meet these guys. And I think that's, you know, the other side, Elijah, that you said, you know, on these friends. I think what, you know, Shane, you and I talked about meeting that first time and you getting to meet me and me getting to meet you. And there was just admiration for the careers that both of us have had.
Great. Yeah, it was
like
excellent.
There's just ultimate respect for what people have done, you know, in our time. I mean, meeting Rick Ferkel the first time. I remember when he was working on Coletta's Silver Crown stuff or you know, along the midgets. And it's like, my gosh, those guys were, you know, like iconic names to the sport. And so you meet them, you know, and even the crew chiefs, I think, were coming through, you know, some were coming from the Outlaws, helping on some of the Silver Crown stuff and getting to meet some of, you know, those individuals and the Gertie engines, you know, and the tuners that were along that, like just, and then, you know, Stanton and just, you know, obviously I got to race with Jimmy Sills quite a bit and, you know, just story after story after story after all these guys that are all, you know, we all have such respect for each other's career and what they did, because we all know that all of those individuals, what they had to do get there, right? It just didn't happen. You just didn't write a check. And again, I don't want to knock today's generation because it's how it's done now.
Yeah.
So they don't have any other choice. I mean, you're going to have a few Trey Osbornes out there, but very few. And you know, kids are not taught to work on their stuff, and you know, that shouldn't be a detriment, right? I know it makes a better race car driver, I believe, but not everybody. You know, Southern California wouldn't be easy to work on your own stuff either. You know,
space.
What's that?
It's because nobody has space,
right? So. You know, that shouldn't be a hindrance for a great race car driver. And then you think of the sim generation coming up. Like that's learning to drive such a different way. I mean, the first Cole that we had on the very first week talked about learning to drive. And when he got into his first street stock, he was actually fairly competitive because the sim got him close enough. And you know, that didn't work when we were there. Like you had to go bust your butt a couple of times. But
you know, I think when I started driving, I mean, I just got out of motocrossing, so I ran motocross for a couple of years. So I was pretty good at running fast without crashing, because you know, you crash on a motocross bike, you know, usually you get hurt, and then you can't race for a while. So I was lucky enough to not wreck. And then I learned, you know, how to pick a line. You know, it's really good for picking the right line on the track to get through the corner on the gas, you know. So so I learned a lot about that. And then when I got in a car, I've been watching them all my life. I mean, I was good right off the bat. You know, 5 or 6 races in, and I won my first main event at Oklahoma City. So, you know, that's something that I don't know how kids do it that don't have any experience being at a track until they all of a sudden somebody gets them a car and they go out there and race.
Well, they drive completely different than we did too.
They do, yeah. And I just kind of floors me to really see some of that happen. And then you know, some of the drivers are out there right now and they're doing really good. They've had no background. They never went to races when they were a kid. All of a sudden they're, you know, 18 or something, and they're racing and they're good. So I guess
and hey, you know, some of it's no fear makes you good in a race
that's
car.
Definitely it.
You know, sometimes it hurts after a while, but most of, you know, sometimes it's real good.
You
know, I mean, I just, you know, we were also, you know, when I came up, we couldn't afford to crash. When I drove in front of my parents, I couldn't crash because we couldn't rebuild the car. I knew it would be catastrophic to the season because, you know, even bending a rear end would be more money than we could afford. So, you know, you drove differently, and you also respected the veterans, and you know, and I kind of love the kids that come out. Like, I remember following Mel Kenyon at Phoenix at the Copper World practice, going, well, this isn't so hard. Like, he's not even hardly going fast. Why is he not going fast? And it was like, we were just faster than him, but I wasn't going to pass him because I respected him so much. Like, because he should be teaching me. And now I kind of love that a racer's like, I don't care that that's Shane Carson. I'm going to go as fast as I can go.
Right.
Like, I don't, I mean, there's a part of that that's so raw that I kind of actually appreciate that they don't know who somebody is. They don't really care. Like,
they're going to run to the
I
fullest.
hate it that they don't have that respect and love of sport from that. But I
Yeah.
kind of love that. I mean, look at that. What was he, 14 that drove Swindell's midget Chili Bowl?
Yeah.
Barnes.
That kid looked about 12. Yes.
I mean, I couldn't even have done it if I had the talent then, because I wouldn't have believed that I was capable
I could
of
do
going
it.
against those guys.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, like you arrived at a racetrack and you saw. Elijah's heard this story. We went to Copper World. Ken Nichols had ran Zerunian's midget at Copper World Classic and won. And that car was, the Zerunians. It's red, white, and blue, gorgeous, beautiful stuff. And Ken was I don't know, he was my hero guy growing up. Like, he's polished and well spoken, and and drove well and calculated and super smooth. And I remember we went to Portland, Oregon, and it was this big race between California, Oregon, and some of us from Idaho. And I was young; I was maybe 18, and considered very young then. I think Ken had been racing 18 years, and I was 18 years old. So that was they would announce that when we would line up next to each other. And I remember going, well, we can't win. Like, I can't beat them. And I remember in the race, I qualified second fast, and Ken was fast. And I remember in the race, I thought, I'll follow him through traffic because, they'll see the red, white, and blue nose in keyed way. And finally I went, man, he must be broke. Something's breaking in his car. So I went by him and went on and won the main event. They had two main events. I won both that day. And I remember going in once we finished the first one, and I told my dad, I'm like, what happened to Nichols? And he goes, he finished second. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, he couldn't keep up. Like, you were gone. But and maybe I wasn't a great driver for always thinking that way, but you just saw those people and you went that. In today's generation, they could care less. They don't think anything. They think they can do anything.
They're going to run as fast as they can make that car go. Yeah. And they may or not have control of it, but they're going to do it.
Right. These fans have to embrace that. I mean, look at Knoxville now. I mean, I can't imagine what it was driving in the cars when you drove that era, but man, those guys in some of these sprint car tracks are flying.
Yeah, they are. When we were running, it was non-wing for one thing. And, you were probably, now they're 5 seconds a lap faster, maybe more. Yeah. Than what we were running. Yeah. So, I mean, it was.
Did you run Ascot? I assume you did.
I did. Yeah, I ran Ascot driving Agajanian's car. So, when I won my first Eldora race at the end of 78, JC Agajanian, what he would do is find the guy that won the last big race. He'd get him to come in and drive his car. So he kept that 98 Junior, polished and ready for whoever needed to come and drive for him. So I seemed to, he liked me. He actually, I don't know, you'll get a kick out of this, but he told me one day that he thought I reminded him of Troy Ruttman. Now, if you remember Troy Ruttman, he's like, 6'5" or something. And I said, well, he's a lot taller. He goes, yeah, but you're from Oklahoma. And so is he. And you guys I can relate to how you both are. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. So there you go. That's how he thought I was like Ruttman.
That's
you know who I met at the Chili Bowl? I think you might have been there, Elijah, was Troy Ruttman's brother.
Yeah.
Joe Ruttman, and he's a really cool guy.
Joe, I raced with a lot of trucks.
I know. Yeah. He was with us the whole time at the Chili Bowl, and he loved it. And he told me more, Troy Ruttman stories, and I told him that about Agajanian, and he just laughed. He's looking at me like, I don't know about that.
He's a funny character, that man.
He was, and he'll be back. I guarantee. He didn't make this year, but he'll be back next year.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah, he's fun, and I think that's what makes guys like you, Jimmy, Hevron, like they all earn their way, and part of what was so great about the sport is, again, you're around your 80 closest friends, but sharing those stories is fun. I mean, this is why it's fun for us.
Oh,
is
this is excellent. I'm
because you
so
just
glad
get
you're
to
doing it. Yeah.
share the stories.
Yeah.
There's some interesting things that you brought up, what Jack brought up. My mind's swirling of
Yeah.
how that could be captured, because
Yeah.
those sound bites, those quick stories should be captured, and a way to capture that, a way to make that easy for people to share those stories. And and it's a lot why we're trying to do this, as much as is help shape the future. It's preserve that past. But
Right.
for the last year, I've just really not been down on racing, but I've been frustrated because I just see the dismissal of it from so many, like social media. If it's sprint car racing and it's the war between the outlaws and high limit, and if you go in places, they all bash each other. The fans do, not the teams. For
people involved.
NASCAR, the teams are, the teams are out there trying to do the best they can. NASCAR's trying to do the best they can. And NASCAR's listened to the fans probably more than they ever have. And yet no one's happy with anything. And it's like people, we're battling a war here of trying to keep automotive relevant, racing to the forefront, no matter what form it is. Elijah and I love anything. And if there were John Deere tractors driving across the street, I would go watch those things.
You guys do. You're perfect for this, because you're going to be able to bring so many things out that nobody's heard.
So it's there's we love the sport, and we want it to bloom in a time where it should be blooming. But if we allow the negative to take the forefront, it's I think the best description that I've heard was, it's like we have a restaurant and we're all out front waving flags saying this is horrible, and who's going to enter?
It sucks.
Yeah. And if it's the chili bowl and not paying enough, or it's this, or like everybody can go right and find their ways. But look at this, we love it and we talk about it, and everybody is doing the same if they get to that point. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for your time spent with Elijah, because as much as he loved the sport, your impact has taken that level to another, because he doesn't just hear my stories, he gets to hear another group of stories. And you're much more iconic in some of the things he loves. So
I'm from Oklahoma. He likes Oklahoma. So.
He does like Oklahoma.
And a large reason of that, I will say, is spending time at the races with you, because it gave me and then I got to shoot some videos and stuff, and I mean the Oklahoma sky when it's sunset at race time is a sight to see. It's beautiful.
It's like no other. Yes.
And it's I fell in love with it was just dirt track racing in Oklahoma became romantic. It was just there was just a cinematic art to it, because of the stories, the people around. I mean, some barn burner shows, tracks that were just so unique, kind of wherever you went. Amazing people, and I mean, it was just great. It was so awesome. I am so sad that it's been
I know.
Almost, I don't even know if it's been.
I'm so glad I got to spend some of that time with you.
Yeah.
And kind of help coach you along a little bit about what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Not that you needed it, but you liked hearing it, and I like telling you.
The stories. It's important for this younger generation to say, "Hey, I love this," and I'm fully bought into it, because, I growing up, if I said, "Ooh, I loved racing," that if you loved the Seahawks or the Raiders or the Rams, or you were cool. But when you say I like racing, you were, that you were a small little minority of who that was. I don't even know who else really raced in my school until a few years after a couple guys did. But no one was racing when I was there.
I didn't have any in my school.
Yeah,
we had a 1,500 class, senior class. There was not one racer in that whole school.
Yeah, isn't that?
But later there was some later, but none while we were going.
In my whole 4 years there, any class above and below me, there was one racer there, which California
Really?
is pretty rare. Austin Farr, he drove legend car.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I think he
That's good.
I think I want to say he ran at Nashville once, maybe it was I know he ran at Irwindale. So
Oh yeah,
on there, but
they're a lot alike. Irwindale, Nashville. Yeah, I like Nashville. We went there one time with the Petty group, and I'm not sure what kind of deal we were doing there, but it was a exhibition run or something, maybe with sponsors. But it was fun. It was rough, and you bounce around. It kind of reminded me of a dirt track, really. And that was just
Kinda
one of
drove
the
in
things that I
low.
got to do. And the deal with Petty, now I got to say, I was as soon as my owner passed away in 2000, and I'd been with him 10 years. I was with the same owner, James Helms, 10 years, and we ran everywhere, all up and down the road. We went everywhere. But anyway, when he passed away, Brad Knopfsinger called me. He said, "Well, I know your owner passed. I'd like for you to come and drive for us somewhere with the Petty thing. I think you'd like it." And I said, "Well, where do you go?" He go, "Oh, we go everywhere." So he said, "I'll send you a ticket to come to Milwaukee, 1 mile flat. So I go up there, and we ran all weekend. It was wall to wall people, big lines. People wanting to go for rides or drive or whatever they were doing, and I immediately connected with the fan wanting to see what it was like to be in a race car, and you know what I'm talking about, Randy, because it was so easy for us because we knew what they needed.
Yeah.
We didn't bounce off the wall. We didn't even do any of that, but we ran fast enough where they knew that it was right on the edge, and they loved it. And just like when I met you at Indianapolis, we were running the Indy, the big track, Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I'd never been there before, and I'm following you down the straightaway, and I get to looking around at the grandstands on both sides, and probably missed the entrance to turn one by a couple feet, and because I was kind of gawking at where we were and what we were doing. I took Tony Stewart's dad with me one time, and he said, "This Nelson," and he said, "This is the first time I've been on this track."
Wow.
I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." So the experiences were just mind blowing for me, and I did it for 5 years, and then I was asked to come to work for the World of Outlaws as a series director,
Hmm.
and kind of an operations manager for the Outlaws. That was in 2005, so that's what I did, and I was with
That's
them for
awesome.
5 years. But yeah, you guided me around that Indy track and told me, "Don't do this because you'll do that." I'm thinking, okay, I get it. And I followed you for a while so I could figure out what to do.
Yeah.
But so
Fun
thank you for keeping me out of trouble.
Okay, so before we wrap up,
Yeah.
we've got these rapid fire questions that we're going to ask to every guest.
Okay.
So just quick, you can answer however you want. Adam took some of his own liberties in his answers, which made it kind of fun. So answer them exactly how you want to answer them.
Okay.
I'm there to show your personality a little bit. So first one, typical racing one, favorite track, if you had to pick one.
Eldora.
Okay, it's a good one on the bucket list.
Yeah.
Most memorable race you've watched?
Oh, that I've watched.
Yeah.
I would say it was that first sprint car race at Devil's Bowl,
Okay.
because it taught me how sprint cars could be on the right track with the right guys there, and they were all there.
Yeah.
So it was amazing.
Josh, to go to Devil's Bowl
Yeah.
in the glory days like that would have been awesome.
Yeah.
Your racing hero growing up?
Everett Humphrey, local driver out of Oklahoma City that ran number 12. So why I run number 12.
Okay, because that's another one of the meaning
It's
behind
on your shirt. Oh, by the way, it's on your shirt. Yeah.
Yep. It's on the this diecast car too.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes care of meaning behind the card number.
Yeah.
Best track food you've eaten?
I like the pizza burger. Believe it or not, I like the pizza burgers from Eldora, because it was like a mozzarella cheese with spaghetti sauce between a couple of patties. And I remember the first time I went to Eldora, Bernice, which was Earl's wife, she said, "You need to try one of these, little boy." And I'm thinking, "Oh, okay." So I got one, and I never went there without having at least 2 or 3 of them.
Okay, they're pretty famous for them. So,
Oh yeah.
your favorite current series to watch?
World of Outlaws still.
And then your favorite hobby outside of racing?
Probably motorcycles. It started with, motocross bikes, and now I've got a couple street bikes. Doug Hevron's got a full dress, Harley, and I just look forward to the time when we get to go and go together, because he's always going one place, I'm going the other. But he rides all the time. We're talking, hundreds of miles a week, and it don't matter if it's snowing or raining or whatever, he goes. He is that tough. Yes. Yes.
Northeastern Modified guys, you hear the stories about. So
yes.
The world. So, and then last one, I'm adding it on for you because I know that you've got your shop. Is there anything in your shop at the moment right now, race car wise, or is there anything coming?
I just got finished with my aluminum car that you saw at the trade show at the Chili Bowl, but now it's at the Hall of Fame in Knoxville.
Yep.
And it's fixing to move from there to Speedway Motors Museum, probably around May or April or May, I think. And so it'll be up there for a while, but there's the only thing that's race related in the shop right now is all the pieces of my race cars that are up around the wall, whether it be sideboards or hoods or bodies or whatever. So I've got 2 different motorcycles in there. I've got a couple of cars that I maintain, a GMC truck, 90 model. I've got a 77 Z28 that I bought after I won my first race at Eldora. I still have it. So some people have trophies, which I still have that too. But that car, I bought it after I won that race at Eldora, and I still have it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, all right. I guess that kind of wraps us up because we could go all night with all the stories and stuff. So, we've said it to every guest and we've meant it to every guest, but we've got to have you back on at some point to keep it going.
We'll do that. If you find a place for me, I don't mind. I like what you're doing. If I could make any kind of an impact for your deal, I would be honored.
Oh, we're honored that you wanted to join us tonight.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we will see you guys all next week, Wednesday mornings, still Spotify and YouTube. Fast Motor Podcast signing off, episode number 4.